Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Jeff Pegues, joined as usual by CBS News Senior National Security Analyst Juan Zarate.
Jeff, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
El Chapo.
El Chapo, the shorty.
The shorty, that's what they call him. He got away again. How has this affected diplomacy between Mexico and the U.S.? This has strained relations a little bit here.
It has. In some ways, it has injected some mistrust between the U.S. and Mexico that had been fading over time. Keep in mind, there's a history of mistrust between Mexican law enforcement and security services and the U.S. The U.S. seen as the great hegemon, the great neighbor to the north, always impeding, always overreaching, and invading sort of Mexican sovereignty. And so there's always been sensitivity and tension. But over the past decade, there's been a sort of a rapprochement, a détente, if you will, in terms of information sharing and work between security services, even the military, Jeff, which was really kind of a no-go zone for a while. This has raised some questions, though, again, as to whether or not that level of cooperation is deep enough, whether or not it's good enough. And certainly what you saw in the wake of the arrest of Chapo Guzmán was a bit of chest thumping on the part of the Mexicans, and saying, look, we're not going to extradite him to the U.S. We don't need to. We can handle him on our own. Well, he's escaped for a second time. Clearly, the Mexican government can't handle him, and it has raised some questions as to what that cooperation between the U.S. and Mexico looks like. It's not going to destroy it by any stretch, but it is calling some of that into question. Yeah,
earlier in the week, there was a lot of criticism coming from parts of the U.S. government, most of it on background, obviously. Now, as we get deeper into the week, it's been kind of quiet here. What is happening behind the scenes?
Well, I think you have two things. One is the diplomatic aspect that you've mentioned, Jeff, which is I think the U.S. wants to keep the temperature low here. But secondly, I think the U.S. wants to actually help find Chapo Guzmán.
How can it help?
Well, it can help with intelligence. It can help with ISR potentially if he's found to be near the border.
ISR?
Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Those are different assets to include drones from the sky and other ways of tracking individuals. And so, you know, the U.S. can help there and certainly help with any of the cross-border dimensions and communications that may be underway. Keep in mind, Chapo Guzmán, the most powerful drug lord in Mexico, runs the Sinaloa cartel. They have tentacles into the U.S., and that's in part why—
Many big cities in the U.S.
In many big cities, and that's in part why the U.S. wants to try him as well. And I think what the U.S. is also doing, I think, is they're trying not to aggravate the situation, because if Chapo Guzmán is caught, and I think he will be, not sure when, but I think he will be, the U.S. will want to make a very strong case that now's the moment to extradite him and will want to be ready. And so likely there's preparation for that moment to say, look, we're ready to go. We've got the paperwork. We've got the indictment. The prosecutors are sharpening their knives. We're ready to go. Send him to New York or send him to D.C. or send him to Chicago.
So you're saying it's going to be harder for the Mexican government to say no to extradition this time, if they catch him?
I think so. The challenge here for Mexico is they don't want to lose face, right? This is embarrassing for them. For the Peña Nieto government, this is another challenge for them. They've wanted to get away from the narrative that Mexico's defined by the drug war, by the drug cartels, by the corruption. But you've had the killing of the students, the missing 42, that has rocked the regime in Mexico City. You now have this. And so Peña Nieto, who came in wanting to talk about the economic growth and opportunities, the political reforms, reform in the energy sector, fiscal reforms, all of that has been challenged and shaken by the fact that you've had these incidents. And in particular, Chapo Guzmán is emblematic of that, the reality that Mexico has to deal with the drug problem and corruption.
Yeah, and it will continue to be a distraction until he's caught.
Absolutely.
If he's caught.
Well, I'm sure you'll cover the trial if he's facing
caught.
Trial here.
Yes. Yeah. Juan Zarate, I'm Jeff Pegues. That is Flashpoints.